He visited his ex in the hospital, then discovered triplets who looked just like him. Welcome to my YouTube channel, Truth Untold Story. Which country are you watching this video from? If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell for more emotional stories every day. Ethan Carter stood in front of his office window, staring out at the city skyline bathed in a golden dusk. The hum of conversation, the clinking of glasses from the executive lounge behind him, none of it registered. His assistant had just handed him a message, not from a board member, not from a client, from someone he hadn't heard about in 3 years. A name that once meant everything. Emily. He reread the text on his phone again and again, hoping it might somehow change. Emily is in the hospital. She's asking for you. No sender, no context, just those 10 words, but those words hit like a tidal wave. 3 years ago, Emily had vanished from his life as quietly as she'd come into it. No fight, no goodbye. One morning she was next to him, tangled in the sheets, whispering her dreams. By evening, she was gone. At first, he thought she just needed space. A day passed, then a week, then 2. He tried calling, texting, even showed up at her old apartment. Empty. He never got a reason. He buried himself in work, convincing himself he didn't care, that she wasn't a part of his world anymore. But the truth never went away. He loved her. He always had. And now, she was in a hospital, asking for him? He looked around his office, the polished furniture, the glowing monitors, the wall of awards, the very empire he had built after she left. None of it mattered. Not tonight. Cancel my evening, he told his assistant, grabbing his coat. But Mr. Carter, the investor dinner. Reschedule it. Something more important just came up. He walked out of the building without another word, the elevator doors closing behind him like a seal shutting on the life he was about to leave behind. For now. His driver opened the car door, but Ethan waved him off. I'll drive. Rain had begun to fall as he sped down the freeway, windshield wipers slicing through the haze. He didn't know which hospital. He didn't know why she was there, but somehow he just knew where to go. His hands gripped the steering wheel tighter with every mile. What had happened to her? Why now, after all this time? As the city lights blurred past, memories came flooding back. The way she used to laugh when he danced like a fool in their kitchen, the smell of her coffee in the morning, the day they lay on the grass, talking about names for children they might have one day. He shook his head. Don't go there. Just get to her. His phone buzzed again, another unknown number. He didn't check it. He couldn't. All that mattered was Emily. Her voice in his head kept repeating, "She's asking for you." He pulled into the hospital parking lot, heart pounding like a war drum. This place, sterile lights, quiet hallways. I used to be, he said, hesitating. Then firmer, she asked for me. She nodded and pointed down the corridor. Room 214. She's stable, but it's been a rough few days. Ethan nodded and walked slowly down the hall. Each step felt heavier. With every inch closer, the questions grew louder in his mind. What had happened to her? Why had she called for him? And why, after 3 long years, did it feel like his heart had never let her go? The hallway was quiet, filled with the low hum of distant machines and muffled footsteps. Ethan paused outside room 214, his hand hovering just above the doorknob. He inhaled sharply, bracing himself. Then he pushed the door open. Inside, the room was dimly lit, washed in the soft glow of a bedside lamp. Emily lay in the hospital bed, her face turned toward the window. She looked thinner, weaker, but still so achingly familiar. He stood there silently for a moment, unsure if she was asleep. Then, without turning, she spoke. "I was wondering if you'd come." Her voice, fragile but calm, reached right into the pit of his chest. He stepped closer. "I came as soon as I got the message." Finally, she turned her head and looked at him. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the room shrank. No machines, no white walls, just them, as if nothing had changed, as if everything had. Emily's lips curled into a faint smile. "You look different," she said. "More tired." Ethan tried to chuckle, but it came out broken. "Life moves fast without you." There was a pause, the silence stretching between them. He moved to the chair beside her bed and sat down. "I have so many questions, Emily. I deserve answers." Her gaze drifted toward her hands, fingers nervously twisting the hospital blanket. "I know," she said. I never planned on saying goodbye like that." "Then why did you?" Ethan's voice cracked, not with anger, but with years of hurt. "I searched for you. I waited, every day hoping you'd reach out." Emily's eyes glistened. "I didn't want to be a burden. You were on the edge of something incredible, Ethan. I saw the pressure on you, the long nights, the investors, the plans. I didn't want to be the weight that pulled you down." "That wasn't your decision to make," he said, softly but firmly. "You should have let me choose." Her lips trembled. She nodded. "I know. I thought I was doing the right thing, but I was scared. Not just for me, for everything." Ethan stared at her, unsure of what to feel first. Sadness, anger, relief. He had imagined this moment 1,000 different ways. None of them prepared him for the real. A nurse stepped halfway into the room, smiling gently. "Sorry to interrupt," she said kindly, "but the children are awake now. Should I bring them in?" Ethan turned his head slowly toward the nurse, confusion flashing across his face, his brow furrowed. "Children," he echoed, like he hadn't heard her right. The nurse nodded, looking briefly at Emily for confirmation. Emily didn't say a word. Her eyes dropped again. Her fingers froze on the blanket. Ethan looked from the nurse to Emily, then back again. He stood up slowly, his voice low. "I'm sorry, what?" "Children." Emily didn't answer. Not right away. Her chest rose and fell in a deep, shaky breath. She wouldn't meet his eyes. The air in the room changed. Something unsaid was hanging there, just inches from the surface. Ethan took a slow step forward. His voice softened. "Emily, what's going on?" The nurse sensed the tension and gave a small nod. "I'll give you a moment," she said, then quietly left the room. Now it was just the two of them again. The hum of the machines seemed louder. Emily stared at the closed door. Her lips parted as if to speak, but she hesitated. Ethan waited, his heart thudding in his chest. Finally she looked up. Her eyes met his. And for the first time since he walked into the room, he saw something else in them. Fear. The door creaked open again. Ethan turned instinctively, still processing the fear in Emily's eyes, when the nurse gently stepped back in, this time with 3 small figures holding her hands. They were children, young, maybe 3 years old. 2 boys stood on either side of a little girl, all of them wide-eyed, curious, and quiet. Their shoes tapped softly against the tile floor. Ethan stood frozen, unsure if what he was seeing was real. His breath caught halfway in his chest. 3 sets of green eyes blinked up at him, bright, familiar, too familiar. One of the boys smiled, a crooked grin that Ethan had seen 1,000 times in the mirror. The little girl's hair was slightly wavy, falling into her face the same way his did when he was a kid. and the second boy was chewing his bottom lip, exactly the way Ethan did when he was nervous. It was like looking into the past, 3 reflections of himself, but smaller, softer, untouched by the world. He looked at Emily. Her hands gripped the edge of the blanket. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Ethan's voice came out a whisper. "Emily, are they—" She nodded once. It was small, barely visible, but it was enough. "Yes," she said quietly, "they're yours." A wave of dizziness hit him, and he stumbled back half a step. Ethan lowered himself slowly onto his knees, never taking his eyes off them. He didn't know what to say. He didn't know if he could say anything. His heart felt too full. His lungs felt too small. All 3 children were still watching him, as if unsure what to do. Then the girl took a careful step forward, her little shoes tapping on the tile. She tilted her head. "Hi," she said, her voice small but confident. "Are you my daddy?" That broke him. A sharp breath left Ethan's mouth, and his shoulders began to shake. Tears spilled over his cheeks, raw, heavy, and unfiltered. He'd cried before. He'd cried in frustration, in grief, in loneliness. But never like this. This was something else. He reached out with trembling hands, not to pull them in, but just to feel their presence, to confirm they were real. The girl looked back at the boys as if asking silent permission. Then, slowly, all 3 walked toward him. One of the boys crouched beside him and touched his suit jacket with wonder. The other stood at his side, leaning gently into his arm. The little girl wrapped her arms around his neck, and Ethan, powerful, successful, respected, cried into her tiny shoulder. Tears soaked her shirt as he whispered, "I'm so sorry I wasn't there." Emily turned her head away, wiping her own tears. Ethan looked up at her, eyes red, voice raw. "You raised them on your own?" She nodded. "I did my best. I never told them about you. Not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't know if I'd ever see you again." One of the boys tugged lightly at Ethan's tie. "Are you staying with us?" he asked innocently. Ethan let out a breath that shook like a storm. "I'm not going anywhere." He pulled them close, their tiny hands clinging to his shirt, his arms wrapping around all 3. And for the first time in years, he felt whole. The hospital room had grown quiet again. The children had fallen asleep on a padded bench beneath the window, curled up under a warm blanket brought in by a kind nurse. Their gentle breathing filled the room with a rhythm softer than any lullaby. Ethan sat beside Emily now, a paper cup of lukewarm coffee in one hand, her medical chart untouched on the table nearby. But his eyes weren't on the chart. They were on her. She looked exhausted, but something about her was peaceful now. Like a burden she had carried alone for years had finally been set down. Her voice broke the silence. "I found out just 3 days after I left." Ethan didn't speak. He didn't want to interrupt. Emily kept her gaze on the ceiling, as if the truth would be easier to tell if she didn't have to see the hurt on his face. "I took the test in my sister's bathroom," she said softly. "I remember thinking, this changes every—" Her eyes brimmed with guilt. "But you were everywhere, on the news, in Forbes, launching your company. You were flying so high. I didn't want to be the reason you had to land." He stared at her, the weight of her words sinking deep. "I would have landed in a heartbeat," he said quietly. "For you, for them." Emily reached for his hand. For a moment they just held on, both silent. "I thought I was protecting you," she whispered, "but I realize now I hurt you and myself. I missed everything I was too afraid to hold on to." He didn't pull away. Instead, he threaded his fingers through hers. "I would have chosen you," he said, "every time, and I would have chosen them too." A tear rolled down Emily's cheek, trailing slowly across her pale skin. She brushed it away quickly, but not fast enough for Ethan to miss it. I watched them learn to crawl, to walk, to speak. I memorized every sound, every expression, but every birthday, I wondered if I had done the right thing by keeping you away. His voice trembled. You didn't have to carry it alone. She looked down. I know that now. I just didn't know how to go back. Ethan leaned in closer. You don't have to go back. We're here, right now. We move forward from this. Emily gave a small nod, her lips pressing into a thin line. I don't expect forgiveness. He shook his head gently. This isn't about blame. It's about healing. Outside the window, the rain had stopped. A pale moonlight poured through the glass, falling across Emily's bed like a soft spotlight. Ethan looked at her, not just as the woman he had loved, but the woman who had endured something unimaginable. Alone, strong, and still full of grace. You're still her, he said, more to himself than her. Who? She asked. The woman who made me want more than money, more than success. You made me want a life. She blinked, startled by the depth in his tone. I don't know what comes next, Emily admitted, but I want you to know, I never stopped loving you, even when I told myself I had to. Ethan reached across the bed, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. I never stopped either. And for a moment, there was no hospital, no monitors, no years lost, just two people, and the space between them finally beginning to close. The days passed softly, each one folding into the next like pages in a new book. Ethan returned to the hospital every morning, never once missing a visit. He brought small things at first, coloring books, snacks, a stuffed bear in a little red hoodie. But the most important thing he brought was time. He learned the rhythms of their little world. Liam was the curious one, always asking questions. Logan liked to stack things. He read to them before nap time, sometimes falling asleep on the couch, with a child tucked into each arm. They started waiting for him by the door. They argued about who would sit on his lap. They called him Mr. Ethan at first. But one afternoon, Logan crawled into his arms and said it, soft, unsure. Daddy? The world seemed to freeze. Ethan blinked, stunned. He looked over at Emily, who sat in the armchair beside the bed, her hand pressed to her mouth. From that moment on, everything changed. The other two followed, one by one. Daddy, look. Daddy, I drawed a sun. Daddy, do we get cookies today? He did his best not to cry every time they said it. Sometimes he failed. Emily watched quietly, never interfering. She saw him changing, not into someone new, but into someone he had always been meant to be. And as the days stretched into weeks, the hospital visits became more than routine. They became home. One day, while Lily was asleep on his chest and the boys played quietly with toy trucks on the floor, Ethan looked at Emily. She was packing a small overnight bag, slowly folding her robe. You're being discharged tomorrow, he said gently. She nodded, without looking up. I know. I've been thinking, he said. Actually, I've been doing more than thinking. She turned to face him. He stood, carefully setting Lily down, and stepped toward her. He wasn't nervous, not this time. He knew exactly what he wanted. I want you to come home with me, he said. Her eyes widened. Not out of guilt, not because of the kids, but because I love you, Emily. I never stopped. And I want this. All of it. You, them, us. Her lips parted, but no sound came at first. He reached for her hand, their fingers locking the way they once had, as if no time had passed. I want to wake up to tiny footsteps on the floor, he continued. I want pancake Saturdays and messy living rooms and stories before bed. I want to be a family with you. Her hand trembled in his, and then tears spilled over her cheeks. I've been dreaming of this moment, she whispered, voice cracking. Even when I thought it could never happen, even when I told myself I didn't deserve it. Ethan pulled her close. You deserve everything. She laughed through her tears. And pancakes? He smiled. Every Saturday. From the couch, Liam called out, Can we have chocolate chips in them? Emily and Ethan both laughed. Real laughter. Whole laughter. Yes, Ethan said. Chocolate chips for everyone. And for the first time in years, they weren't looking back. Ethan had the playroom built right beside his home office, its walls painted with murals of rockets and jungle trees. The room overflowed with puzzles, plush toys, and a small wooden kitchen set where Lily cooked invisible meals daily. He swapped late-night investor calls for dance parties in the living room. Preschool pickup became a non-negotiable on his calendar. Once, a board member joked about the crayon scribbles on Ethan's Zoom whiteboard. Ethan just smiled. That's Logan's latest artwork, he replied proudly. We're expecting a gallery opening soon. Emily moved in slowly, quietly, unsure at first how to fit herself into a life that once seemed so distant. But every day, Ethan made room. Not just in his house, but in every corner of his heart. He left her notes in the kitchen. Coffee's ready. You slept in, finally. Liam said you're the best mom. I agree. They painted the nursery together again. Not because they needed it, but because it gave them a reason to laugh while covered in blue and yellow streaks. Some nights were hard. Liam would wake from a nightmare and climb into their bed. Logan once knocked over Ethan's limited edition server trophy, trying to chase a paper airplane. But Ethan never once wished for the quiet again. Instead, he sat beside Emily each evening, long after the kids had gone to sleep. Sometimes they spoke, sometimes they didn't need to. Under the stars, wrapped in a blanket on the back patio, he would trace circles on her hand and whisper, I lost you once, but I'm never letting go again. Emily often replied with a kiss to his shoulder or a quiet, You found me, and you found them too. One evening, Lily toddled into the room with a picture drawn in crayon, 5 stick figures holding hands under a crooked rainbow. She held it out to Ethan proudly. That's us, she said, our family. Ethan stared at it, longer than he expected to. It wasn't just cute, it was proof. Proof that healing had happened here. The road hadn't been smooth. They argued sometimes, about bedtime or work or whose turn it was to clean up spilled juice. But the love never left. It simply grew stronger through each test. Liam learned how to ride a bike with Ethan jogging beside him. Logan became obsessed with building things, so Ethan ordered tiny tools and let him help around the house. Lily sang songs at bedtime that made everyone cry without knowing why. And Emily? She wrote again. Poems, essays, things she'd buried long ago. Her laughter filled every room. One Saturday morning, while they made pancakes in pajamas, Ethan turned the music up too loud and twirled Emily in the middle of the kitchen. The kids clapped, the dog barked, the eggs burned, and it was perfect. Not flawless, not neat, but whole.